All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a masterclass on something absolutely critical. A field-tested method for making those huge, complex business decisions. You know, the ones that keep you up at night? We're talking about how to do it with real clarity and conviction.
So picture this. You're facing a multi-million-dollar decision. The stakes are massive. How do you build that rock-solid conviction, and fast? This is the core challenge, right? It's the moment where everything either comes together or falls apart. So let's get into a structured way to tackle this head-on.
Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to cover the Playbook Method itself, and then walk through 4 key lessons: locking your scope, hunting for evidence, doing the math, and finally, driving the decision. Let's jump in.
All right, first things first. What even is the Playbook Method? At its heart, it's a journey from a good story to cold, hard evidence. So here's the formal definition. But what does that really mean? Well, think of it like this. It's a structured, repeatable way to pressure test an idea. It helps you cut through all the noise and make a call you can actually stand behind, especially when the clock is ticking. It's designed to get you away from those vague gut feelings and also away from just drowning in data. The goal is solid analytics and assumptions everyone can see.
And this is so important because the whole method is built to stop you from falling into one of 2 traps. On one side, you have narrative diligence. That's when you fall in love with a good story and just accept it without really kicking the tires. On the other side, you have evidence-based diligence, which is where you need to be. It's about anchoring every single thing you do in verifiable facts, not just what feels right or what has momentum. This process forces you to back up every claim with real evidence.
All right, let's get into our first lesson, lock your scope. This one is all about starting with the end in mind. Seriously, success here begins with being absolutely ruthless about defining a clear, locked-in scope.
So, what's the goal of this lesson? It's to prevent what we call decision drift. You know, when a project just keeps expanding and you lose focus. The whole point here is to define precisely what you're going to do and, just as important, what you are not going to do. This is the discipline that stops you from trying to boil the ocean and instead channels all your energy into the few things that actually matter.
Okay, so how do you actually do this? You create something called a workstream charter. Think of it as your roadmap. Step 1, you define one single objective. What is the one decision this work will enable and by when? Step 2, you frame your hypotheses as what would have to be true statements. This makes them testable. Step 3 is huge. You actually quantify the value at stake. How much money is on the line if this hypothesis is right or wrong? Step 4, the not doing list. Be explicit about what's out of scope to stop that dreaded creep. And finally, step 5, plan your attack. How will you prove each critical variable, not just once, but twice?
And here's the key filter for this entire lesson. For every question you're thinking of pursuing, ask yourself this: if this were true or false, would we act differently? If the answer is no, just drop it. It doesn't matter how interesting it is. If it doesn't change the decision, it's noise, not signal. Okay, on to lesson 2. You've locked in your scope, you know what questions matter. Now, it's time to go out and hunt for evidence to actually test your hypotheses with external proof.
So the whole goal of this lesson is to move from what your team believes internally to what you can validate externally. This is where your thesis really meets the real world. You're trying to build a picture of reality based on verifiable outside-in data, not just what people around the conference table think.
And to do this right, there are some key principles you have to follow. You work backward from the decision. You always bias towards what people actually do, revealed behavior like invoices and contracts, over what they just say in an interview. You cross-check your most important variables with a second method. And this one's key. You actively hunt for failure. Talk to customers who churned, find out why you lost deals. That's where the real learning is.
Now this is a perfect example of how to put that into practice. Look at the difference here. Asking, how valuable is our new feature, is just asking for a compliment. It's a bad leading question. But asking, which alternative solved this problem better for you? Well, that question is a goldmine. It forces a comparison and gets you real, hard-hitting, competitive insights. And when you're actually on the phone, this is how you start. This script is golden. You introduce yourself, you clarify you're doing an independent study, and you promise confidentiality and anonymity. Setting the stage like this is absolutely critical. It builds trust and gets you the unbiased, honest answers you're looking for. All right, so far you've locked your scope and you've hunted for evidence. You probably have a ton of notes, quotes, and data points. Now for lesson 3, do the math. This is where we turn all those stories and insights into actual numbers.
And the goal of this lesson is simple but powerful. We're going to build a market size and opportunity estimate from the ground up. This isn't about pulling a number from a report. It's about creating a transparent, replicable model where every single number can be traced back to a piece of evidence you found.
Now, to do this math right, you absolutely have to understand this funnel. First, you have TAM, the total available market. That's the entire universe, the biggest possible number. Then you have SAM, the serviceable available market. That's the slice of the universe you can actually reach with your product right now. And finally, you have SOM, the serviceable obtainable market. That's the part you can realistically capture. Getting these three mixed up is probably the #1 way market sizing goes wrong. So how do we build this? We use the bottom-up method. It's the most credible way because you're building from reality, not just guessing. Step 1, freeze your definitions. What exactly is a buyer? What product are we talking about? Get specific. Step 2, count them. Use external data to get a real count of eligible buyers. Step 3, estimate how many will actually buy and how much they'll use. Step 4, and this is so important, use the realized price, what people actually paid on an invoice, not the sticker price. Then, and only then, you multiply it all together to get your market size for that segment.
And here's what that looks like in a super simplified example. You can see we've broken the market into mid-market and enterprise. We have the number of buyers, our estimated adoption rate, and the average realized price. You multiply across, add them up, and boom, you have a serviceable, obtainable market of $12.5 million. See? It's not magic, it's just methodical math.
Okay, this brings us to our final and maybe most important lesson: drive the decision. Because let's be honest, all this amazing analysis is completely worthless if it doesn't actually lead to a clear choice.
The entire goal of this last lesson is to deliver a point of view. It has to be defensible, it has to be based on evidence, and it has to give the decision makers exactly what they need to act. Your deliverable is not a report, it's not a data dump, it is an instrument designed to force a choice. And a decision-ready deliverable has some key elements. You need a one-page summary of your thesis right up front. Your market sizing needs to be transparent, showing all your work. You should include powerful, direct but anonymized customer quotes. And crucially, every single material claim has to be footnoted. Someone should be able to pick it up, see your conclusion, and then trace every single step you took to get there. And let's end on this quote, because this is really the standard you have to hold yourself to. It's simple, but it is unforgiving. Every material claim must be traceable to a source, replicable by a second person, and framed with an explicit confidence rating. That right there is why this method works. It builds conviction because it leaves no room for doubt.
So, your next big decision? It's coming. The question is, what's your first play going to be? By applying these 4 lessons we've walked through, locking your scope, hunting for evidence, doing the math, and then driving the decision, you'll be ready. You'll have the playbook to make that move with total confidence.